Porsche's biggest threat isn't a Chinese factory. It isn't a Chinese battery. It's the man who used to sell Porsches, now selling for the company built to bury them. His name is Lorenzo Saravia, a former Porsche sales executive. He's one of more than 50 European luxury automotive executives who, in the last 12 months, have quietly walked out of Porsche, Stellantis, and Peugeot, and into a Chinese sub-brand called Denza. They weren't recruited by Chinese expats. They were recruited by their own peers. The man overseeing the operation is Alfredo Altavilla, the Italian executive who once ran Fiat Chrysler's European business. The car they're selling was designed by Wolfgang Egger, the German stylist who spent 20 years at Audi. The car is called the Denza Z9 GT. It costs 115,000 euros in Germany, exactly 1,400 euros, less than a Porsche Panamera. It produces 952 horsepower. It carries a 122 kilowatt-hour battery. It charges from 10 to 70% in 5 minutes, and by the end of this year, 3,000 fast-charging stations will exist across 30 European countries to support it. There's also a $6 billion factory in Hungary, currently under investigation for forced labor allegations. Flash forward, late 2026, Denza showrooms open across the United Kingdom. Daniel Craig is the global brand ambassador. The sales staff inside those showrooms speak with German, Italian, and French accents, and most of them used to work for the brands BYD is now displacing. If you want to know how Europe's most protected industry got hollowed out without a single shot fired, you're in the right place. New case file every Friday. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. To understand what's happening, you have to rewind to 2010. Denza was originally a joint venture between BYD and Mercedes-Benz's parent company, Daimler. Mercedes contributed the engineering, BYD contributed the batteries. For 10 years, the brand sold almost nothing. In 2021, Mercedes pulled most of its stake. In September 2024, BYD bought out the rest. Then the strategy changed. Denza was rebuilt as BYD's strike weapon against German luxury. Egger was hired in Shanghai. Altavilla was retained as a European advisor. The recruitment lists, according to Bloomberg, started with Porsche. The first car off the line for the European push is the Z9 GT. The numbers explain why Porsche's board is panicking. A Porsche Panamera Turbo SE hybrid produces about 700 horsepower. The Z9 GT produces 952. The Panamera tops out around 300 kilometers of electric-only range. The Z9 GT's WLTP rating is over 1,000 kilometers. The Panamera's 800-volt fast charging system, considered industry-leading when it launched, charges at peak rates of 270 kilowatts. BYD's flash charger peaks at 1,360 kilowatts. That's not a faster charger, that's a different category of physics. 400 kilometers of range in 5 minutes. Fast enough that the bottleneck stops being the car and starts being the grid. This is where the patent angle most people expect collapses. BYD did not steal Porsche's charging technology. BYD has filed over 50,000 patents worldwide, with more than 30,000 granted. It owns its own battery chemistry, its own motors, its own platform. It doesn't need anything from Stuttgart. What it needed was the one thing it couldn't manufacture in Shenzhen: European credibility. That came in 2 ways. The first was talent. Egger gave Denza a European face. Saravia and the other ex-Porsche sales hires gave it a European voice. Altavilla gave it a European war plan. When a German banker walks into a Denza dealership in Munich and is sold a car by someone who used to sell him his last Panamera, the friction of buying Chinese collapses. The second came from infrastructure. Last month, BYD's executive vice president Stella Lee told reporters at a London conference that the company was negotiating with Stellantis to take over its underused European factories. The targets are 2 Italian plants, Cassino and Mirafiori. Cassino produced just 2,916 vehicles in the first quarter of this year. a 37% collapse year over year. BYD wants 100% ownership, not a joint venture. Full operational control of European production lines, staffed by European workers, building Chinese cars. The European Union saw this coming. In October 2024, Brussels imposed a 17% tariff on top of the existing 10% flat rate on Chinese electric vehicles, specifically citing unfair government subsidies. The tariff was supposed to slow BYD down. It hasn't. Q1 2026 overseas sales for BYD hit 321,000 units, a 55.8% jump year over year. The company has raised its full-year overseas target to 1.5 million vehicles. Then comes Szeged, the $6 billion factory in Hungary, designed for 300,000 vehicles per year, was supposed to be BYD's clean answer to the tariff problem. Build inside Europe. Skip the tax. But in April 2026, China Labor Watch published an investigation based on interviews with 50 workers at the plant. The allegations included 7-day work weeks, 12 to 14-hour shifts, wages delayed up to 3 months, debt bondage through recruitment fees, and workers being coached to lie to regulatory inspectors. BYD has not formally responded. Brussels now has exactly the ammunition it needed. But here's the part the headlines miss. Whether the EU enforces aggressively or quietly negotiates, the talent has already moved. The infrastructure deals are already in motion. The dealerships are already opening. The Italian factory talks are already underway. Even if Szeged collapses tomorrow, BYD's European architecture is already assembled. And it was assembled out of European parts. Porsche, meanwhile, just installed its third CEO of the decade. Oliver Blume, who ran the company for 10 years, handed the chair to Michael Leiters in January. Leiters spent 13 years at Porsche, then 8 years at Ferrari, then 3 years running McLaren. He's been called back to fix what Blume called, in his own words, massive changes in what are by far Porsche's largest single markets, the USA and China. Translation: the customers stopped buying, and in Europe, the salesmen stopped showing up to work. There's an old story about how Wang Chuanfu, BYD's founder, built his company in the 1990s. He didn't have the capital to license battery technology from Sony or Sanyo. So he bought their products, took them apart, and rebuilt them piece by piece in his own factory. 30 years later, BYD doesn't need to reverse engineer anything from Porsche. It just buys the people, it hires the designers, it pays the recruiters. The patents stay where they always were, locked in glass cases in Stuttgart, protecting a category of car that nobody under 40 wants anymore. The empires that die in the next decade won't die in courtrooms. They'll die in resignation letters, one quiet signature at a time. Next case file drops Friday. Subscribe so you don't miss it.